Hi, my name's Andrew Francis, and we're going to continue on today looking at Isaiah chapter 21. As we will see in this next series of prophecies, the prophet is stringing together various images and pictures, using words more to create an atmosphere or the sense of what he is potentially experiencing in his vision, rather than well-described events that might happen. The Hebrew at times is very difficult to interpret, or it can be interpreted in numerous ways. And so that makes it difficult for us to know exactly what the prophet is trying to convey. Let's begin at verse 1 of chapter 21 and we'll read through to verse 10. The oracle concerning the wilderness of the sea. As whirlwinds in the Negeb sweep on, it comes from the wilderness, from a terrible land. A stern vision is told to me, the traitor betrays and the destroyer destroys. Go up, O Elam, lay siege, O Media. All the sighing she has caused I bring to an end. Therefore my loins are filled with anguish, pangs have seized me, like the pangs of a woman in labour. I am bowed down so that I cannot hear, I am dismayed so that I cannot see. My heart staggers, horror has appalled me, the twilight I longed for has been turned for me into trembling. They prepare the table, they spread the rugs, they eat and drink. Arise, O princes, oil the shield. For thus the Lord said to me, Go, set a watchman. Let him announce what he sees. When he sees riders, horsemen in pairs, riders on donkeys, riders on camels, let him listen diligently, very diligently. Then he who saw cried out, Upon a watchtower I stand, O Lord, continually by day, and at my post I am stationed whole nights. And behold, here comes riders, horsemen in pairs. And he answered, Fallen, fallen is Babylon, and all the carved images of her gods he has shattered to the ground. O my threshed and winnowed one, what I have heard from the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, I announce to you. In this prophecy concerning Babylon, it's unclear which defeat of Babylon is being talked of. It is of course possible that both defeats are being alluded to by the prophet. Some parts of the prophet, such as the mention of Elam and Media, seem to be pointing to Babylon's destruction in 539 BC by Persia, in the time of Belshazzar, who is discussed in Daniel. And yet the fall of Babylon in 702 BC at the hands of Sennacherib would have been a much greater import to the main message of Isaiah, who was seeking to discourage Judah from any reliance on Babylon to protect them from the Assyrians. As John Oswald suggests, the visions seems to combine the pictures of both the near and far situations in order to give a complete statement. Verse 1 begins with a very enigmatic statement, the oracle concerning the wilderness of the sea. Now, it might refer to the fact that southern Mesopotamia was known as the sea land, and it might be suggesting the sea land is a desert in its ability to provide help. Again, we're beset with language issues as the verse continues. Possibly Isaiah is describing the coming of his vision like a whirlwind coming upon him. Isaiah lets us know that this is a stern vision. It's a difficult and a painful vision that causes Isaiah much distress. He is both distressed by what he sees in terms of human betrayal and destruction. He is so distressed by what God is showing him that his whole body is impacted. And even though Babylon is so often representative of those opposed to God and his purposes, nonetheless the prophet cannot but be horrified by what he sees befalling this proud nation. They may be the enemies of God's people, but still Isaiah is deeply disturbed by the destruction and the pain that will come upon this nation. I'm sure that some of our prophetic people can identify with the sort of experience Isaiah is describing. In verse 5, Isaiah describes how up until the destruction comes upon Babylon, everyone is partying and going about their usual business. They're completely unaware about what is about to happen to them until it's all too late. It reminds us of the Gospels in which we're told of 10 virgins who are asleep when the groom shows up. And it also reminds us of Jesus warning us that the coming of the Son of Man will take place when people are living their lives as they always have done. So too, Isaiah explains that Babylon will be completely unaware and unprepared. In verses 6 to 9, Isaiah seems to be taking us back now to Judah. And so Isaiah calls for a watchman to be appointed and set upon the walls. The job of the watchman will be to look for the signs pointing to the destruction of Babylon. The watchman's job is to listen and to listen diligently. He will wait day and night to see and interpret what is happening. Finally, he will see the signs and he'll make the announcement. Fallen, fallen is Babylon. The gods of Babylon have been destroyed along with the whole nation. Yes, we are told in verse 10, Judah may have been threshed and winnowed, but she still exists. Babylon, on the other hand, has been destroyed. In those ancient times, threshing was accomplished by animals, sometimes pulling a heavy cart over grain to separate the husk from the kernels. Then on a windy day, the grain would be tossed into the air, the husk would be blown away, leaving the heavier kernels to fall back upon the earth. This is a great analogy of God's discipline upon his people. In Isaiah 21 verses 11 to 12 we read, the oracle concerning Duma. One is calling to me from Seir, Watchman, what time of the night? Watchman, what time of the night? The watchman says, morning comes and also the night. If you'll inquire, inquire, come back again. In this next short little section, we presume that Duma is one of the Arabian allies of Babylon. And Duma was a trade centre about 300 miles southwest of Jerusalem. So with the fall of Duma, all eastern trade connections would have been cut off. The oracle, as we've just read, doesn't seem to say a lot. On one hand, it seems to be saying that the day is dawning or that the light is coming, and yet also this is not the end. Further darkness is yet to come. The message isn't complete. Duma might be destroyed and one of Babylon's allies is gone, but more is still to take place. And so we read verses 13 to 17, the oracle concerning Arabia. In the thickets in Arabia you will lodge, O caravans of Dedanites. To the thirsty bring water, meet the fugitive with bread, O inhabitants of the land of Tema. For they have fled from the sword, from the drawn sword, from the bent bow, and from the press of battle. For thus the Lord said to me, within a year, according to the years of a hired worker, all the glory of Kedar will come to an end. And the remainder of the archers of the mighty men of the sons of Kedar will be few, for the Lord the God of Israel has spoken. In the final oracle of chapter 21, there are a number of Arabian cities referred to, Dedan and Timar, located in Kedar. Whilst there are no forests or thickets in Arabia, potentially Isaiah is sarcastically suggesting that the caravans of Dedan will be forced off the road to escape. The prophecy seems to be suggesting that refugees from Dedan will soon overwhelm the area, fleeing from battle and war, with the people of Timar doing their best to look after them. Yet again, Isaiah prophesies against one of Babylon's allies. How can Judah look to Babylon when both she and her allies will all be defeated in war? Within a year, all that human effort could achieve, described as the glory of Kedar, will come to an end. This also is a good warning to us, that we don't rely on our own efforts or glory in the work of human hands. There's a classic passage in Mark's Gospel, chapter 13, verses 1 to 3. And as he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, Look, teacher, what wonderful stones and what wonderful buildings. And Jesus said to him, Do you see these great buildings? There will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. The disciples were glorying in the beautiful temple that was in Jerusalem. It was a temple that I'm sure many Jews would have been proud of, a temple that showed something of the glory of their God and what they believed in. And yet Jesus says, even if this temple is dedicated to Yahweh, he says, not one stone will stand upon another. And by AD 67, his words had come true. We have to be careful what we put our faith in. Again, we read in Revelation chapter 18, verses 1 to 3. After this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was made bright with his glory. And he called out with a mighty voice, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. For all nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living. And so we've read Isaiah prophesying against Babylon, the city and the nation of Babylon, and it will be destroyed. And it was destroyed, and there is nothing left of it. But John talks about the Babylon that continues, the desire for human beings to prove themselves to be God, as it were, or to be gods. And Isaiah says all the things that human beings trust in, our wealth, our monetary systems, our armies, all these things are going to collapse. An angel will come and declare that they have fallen, just as the prophet tells the watchman to declare that Babylon also has fallen. And so, brothers and sisters, it's an imperative for us as Christian believers to always be ready, to not put our trust in the things of this world, but to keep our eyes fixed firmly on Jesus, to know that he alone is the one true foundation that we can establish our lives on and will never fail us. And so I encourage you in this today. God bless you.